Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today. We're going to get started in a minute or so here. Just give people another minute or two to log in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, folks, we are at the top of the hour. So I think we can go ahead and get started. My name is Kim Howard, and I'm the Public Sector Marketing Manager here at Keeper. I want to thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Breaking Barriers, Demystifying Zero Trust with Chase Cunningham and Keeper Security. Chase Cunningham is very well known in the cybersecurity industry and goes by the nickname Dr. Zero Trust, so we're particularly excited to hear his thoughts on this topic today. Joining Chase is Eric Maniloff, Senior Sales Engineer and Team Lead here at Keeper Security. And before I turn it over to our speakers today, just a couple housekeeping notes. All the attendees' microphones will be muted today. However, if you do have any questions throughout the presentation, we encourage you to type those into the Q&A module, and we'll try to get to those at the end of the presentation. If we happen to run out of time today, we will get to you after the webinar. We'll reach out individually. Today's webinar is being recorded, and all attendees will receive an email copy of the recording sometime early next week. And with that, Chase, the floor is yours.
Great. Hopefully you can hear me okay. So yeah, I kind of giggle every time somebody says the Dr. Zero Trust thing, because I didn't ever sit down and say, hey, let's come up with the Dr. Zero Trust deal. It literally started as a joke, but here we are. So anyway, we'll just keep moving. So let's talk about what it means to implement ZT. I'm not going to read everything on this slide, but I will pick out some important pieces. And let me just start with Zero Trust is something that any organization can do. You could theoretically enable Zero Trust on your own with open source if you were willing to suffer through the misery of trying to build everything with open source software. Those of us that have tried it knows that it's not easy to do, but really trust from digital systems. You don't trust default configurations. You don't trust users to not do things users are going to do. You don't trust the lack of segmentation and isolation. You don't trust people on the internet. You don't trust people not to have bad passwords. There's a real value to approaching the problem that way. And for me, the reason that I think Zero Trust is so applicable is I sat in the chair as a red teamer with the government and other agencies. And Zero Trust, if it had been in place, would have made it very miserable for me as a red teamer to do the things that we did. Let's just run through some basics here. So, right, everything, users, applications, and whatnot should only be allowed on their role. But also, to bullet point number 3 there, micro-segmentation is a very key capability here. The reason for that is you accept compromise in a Zero Trust mindset. It's going to happen. Doesn't matter how awesome your security solutions are. Doesn't matter how much training you have your people do. Sooner or later, just the nature of the internet and the nature of digital systems means something's going to go wrong. When something does go wrong, you want to have isolation, micro segmentation, and control so that you can keep that spread from going from a problem to a cataclysmic failure. And if you remove trust, you're not allowing things to do stuff in a very inherent nature, which is what you don't want. Default is the enemy of Zero Trust. Next slide. Or click, there we go, yeah. So basics, right? What is Zero Trust? Zero Trust has been around since John Kindervag kind of coined the term back in 2010. John would actually tell you that the concept of Zero Trust has been around since the 1900s, based on a poem written by Rudyard Kipling, which talks about the 6 men, who, what, where, when, why, and how. So this is not, and to all the argument that comes out about ZT, this is not an entirely new thing. However, it is a more programmatic, strategic approach to the problem. The reality of it is every user unfortunately, is a risk. Does this mean that we should not trust our people? No, but it means that we should understand that people are people. They're going to use the internet. They're going to have bad passwords. They're going to click things that they shouldn't. It's just the nature of how we are. If we want to have capability to be more secure, we should apply the controls that are going to remediate and reduce the risk that we have from those interactions. I'm a huge fan of elimination of passwords. I think VPNs are a big risk. I think that you should have people running on browser isolation, microsegmentation, et cetera, because of the fact that the Verizon DBIR, the Mandy and M-Trends report, the NSA, the US government, Australian government, whatever, you name it, everyone tells us that those are the things that cause the most compromise. It's like 88 to 90% is those things. Why would we focus elsewhere? Next slide. This is the framework that I created when I was at Forrester. Now the government, being the government, has added this thing there called governance because the government wants to have their play in this. Governance really is what you're thinking about as far as compliance, which is fine. But really what we're talking about is this is I guess you could call it a structured sort of framework. And if we look at the structure of this framework, there's things that we have to take care of: identity, devices, networks, apps and workloads, and data. Data obviously being one of the core things that we're actually trying to protect. Now, how do you do that? It can be done a whole bunch of different ways, but ultimately, if you really think about what's for digital ecosystem, you're going to have these things. All of us have some data that we access. All of us have an identity. Your devices have an identity. Your thermostat in your house has got a login. It's got default creds, whatever. Networks themselves now have identities. And everything is connected via automation and orchestration. And the only way that you can see what's going on is with visibility analytics. So the last piece of that is, how do you take care of that and make sure that you have all the checkboxes in place and not get in trouble with the SEC? You have governance on top of it. But the totality of what is required for a secure digital instantiation of a zero trust implementation requires these pillars to be there. You're going to have different types. You're going to have different abilities. You're going to have different needs. Your organization may or may not have as much focus on one thing as the other. But ultimately, all of these things will be pushed. Yep, next slide. Thank you. So there's a question about how. Okay, well, let's think about the how of this. We've got the why. The why makes a lot of sense. Well, the how is what everyone really tries to get to first. So how to apply the principles of it across the entire organization. Secure. If you put things in front of people that make them miserable, they'll find a way to go around it. I'm a perfect example. I'm a zero bonk, and I have contracted with companies to put really kludgy, crappy security controls in front of me as a contractor. And I'll admit openly, the first thing I did was try and figure out how the heck I could get around it because it was making me miserable. If you have junky security technology that is not integrated to the user's experience and is not something that is native to them, they will find a way to go around it. That's just how humans work. If you got teenagers like I do, any control you put around them, they're going to find a way to get around it. They're just geared that way. That's just what's up. The controls and solutions you have to put in there had better benefit them. Really, if you think about the way we work now, especially with the kind of post-COVID world where we're pseudo-remote and people are bouncing all over the place, you really want to enable them to do business there anytime under their own requirements. Like I don't want to go into the office. I'm lucky because I don't have to. A lot of you, in reality, we operated the sort of remote way during 2 years plus of COVID. We should be able to operate in some sort of manner to look like that now. And it does make everybody happier. Nobody wants to sit in the car to go for a 2-hour drive to get to work or whatever. You want to do your work from the coffee shop. It's got to be easy. And it's got to make sure that you have enough logging in place so that you know what's going on. Now, not just logging for the sake of logs, but logging because you're going to use the logs for an analytic capability. That's why we have that visibility analytics pillar within the ZT framework, is we're all keeping logs. If you look at the compliance requirements, you're logging for the sake of logging because of logs. Use that information for the purposes of applying a control. A weird thing happens, an anomaly, a user doesn't log in from a normal time. There's a different change in how they do things. That log information should be used for analytics so that you can apply a control. And you can do this across the entire organization. There will be some places where you focus a little bit more than others. It's probably going to be around your high profile users, maybe the executive pool. It might be around the users that have access to specific data, could be developers, could be some application that you have. The point being, ultimately, you want to deploy this as everywhere you can, as much as you can, so that you can gain as much operational control as possible. Next slide. There's mandates. Unfortunately, even if you don't think that you like zero trust, and if you don't believe that ZT is a real thing or whatever else, and you think it's just marketing on a sticker, I hate to break it to you, but it's coming for you. The White House basically has said, in Dominus Patria Fili Santi, all federal agencies must have a zero trust plan in place by September 30th of this year. Does that mean that they're done with ZT? Absolutely not. It means that they must have a plan in place so that they can start aligning to that. Now, why does that apply to everyone else? Cyber is one place where you do see trickle down concept, I guess you could call it. If the federal government is doing this, you are going to see state and local governments doing it. Some of you probably already are. Australia is moving to a whole of zero trust approach for their entire nation. The UK is starting to follow up on that. Compliance organizations are starting to graph around to how do we enable zero trust with frameworks, et cetera, et cetera. It's coming your way whether you like it or not. This means that you can adapt to this and start getting in front of it now. If you look at the Pentagon guide, Pentagon says that they will be at a zero trust semblance by 2027. I talk with those folks on the regular. They're doing really, really well. The thing that you should take away from that is if a major, giant, monolithic battleship of an organization can do that like the federal government is, odds are you can too. Again, this is a strategy that you will manipulate and maneuver to work for your organization, but there are requirements coming your way. If you thought that PCI and SS and some of those were things that you got sick and tired of dealing with, be aware that zero trust requirements are working their way toward you. And ultimately, you're going to have an ability to answer for that. It's coming whether we like it or not. I guess I should apologize because I kind of kicked a lot of the stuff off, but I think that there's enough value in it that it's actually a good thing. Next slide. Products to help organizations comply. So those mandates are coming. It's not Super doesn't do this, and I applaud them for that. But any vendor that says that we have the zero trust button, they're not being totally fair with you. They're not being totally honest. The reality of it is that you are going to have a variety of capabilities, some cloud, some prem, some on-prem, some whatever, mobile device, personal device, blah, blah, blah. You're going to have many different capabilities that are needed to enable zero trust. You may or may not have all of those solutions from one particular vendor. It just kind of depends on how you want to do it. Are there vendors that you can get a lot of zero trust capability from? Absolutely. However, know this, that there is not an easy button for ZT. It is also not a set it and forget it thing. This is a marathon. Just like you basically have to understand that the adversaries are coming after us 24/7, 365, your zero trust instantiation had better be ready for a 24/7, 365 sort of approach. It is going to constantly evolve. It's going to get better over time. And I would say that if you do optimize and you do automate, especially with the capabilities we're seeing come out today, you can get to a place where you're actually offsetting the cost of legacy security controls by moving towards a zero trust instantiation. Statistically speaking, here's a number for you. Organizations that have been far along the path for zero trust and have had a breach occur have saved roughly $1.5 million just on the breach response. Now, there's a big spread of that across a whole bunch of different organizations. But the point being, if you're an organization that likes to be ready for when things go wrong and be prepared and save money, which everybody likes saving money, you out. So know this, be honest with yourself, be honest with your leadership, make your vendors be honest with you. Tell them if they say that we've got the zero trust button, I don't think that you have that. How can you work with these other solutions that I have, et cetera? It's just the reality of the space in which we operate. Next slide. There's a few things that I would say are pretty key and core to those pillars, right? Multi-factor authentication, single sign-on, those are huge. MFA is a giant thing that I think most organizations should have immediately ready to go in place. Why? Well, I actually related it was done around. Do you remember a few years ago when you used to go to the gas station and you just zipped your card and got your gas and left? Fraud was rampant. Well, what did they do? They put in a multi-factor authentication protocol, which was you zip your card, you enter your PIN, or you zip your card and enter your zip code. And if those numbers matched up, you got your gas. And like, I think it was like 6 or 8 weeks, the overall industry saw a reduction in fraud by like 90 something percent. It's just that valuable. And MFA is not hard to do. Anyone that complains about being able to do MFA honestly should have their head checked. You do not buckle your seatbelt when you get in a car. It's just that simple. Just do it. It takes 2 seconds to click the little thing. Single sign-on. Everybody wants this. This is a way to move towards passwordless. It makes life easier. Honestly, if the tokens are done correctly and if the users are educated on what they should be doing, SSO can be pretty safe and pretty useful. Yeah, there's ways that you can cause manipulation of MFA and SSO. However, those are kind of higher fruit in the tree. Really taking care of that low-hanging fruit is an easy falls into that. AI is so critical. You got to know who they are, where they're coming, what they're doing, what things they can access. This understand how to take care of the organizational units themselves. And identity and access management includes requests from different machines, applications, etc., the non-human side of the equation. Vulnerability management, patch your stuff, don't patching. The majority of patches are not necessarily super critical because they're not weaponized. However, run for years on end, the weaponization of those things becomes pretty much inevitable. Patching is very critical to this. How do you keep up? How do you prioritize? How do you control? There's cloud security is really one of the places where you can have a pretty greenfield environment. Most of us are transitioning from an cloudy, semi-off-prem sort of infrastructure. Cloud is a great place to go out also, just like it exponentially your opportunities to do good things, it exponentially increases the opportunities for misconfiguration and bad things to happen. So you had better have other things in place to make sure that your cloud is as secure as possible. You can't take your old janky on-prem system, shove it into the cloud, and turn on MFA for the cloud and think you're done. It's going to require a bit of effort to get that right. And you better make sure that you get it right, because if you don't, bad things can happen at the scale and speed of cloud, which is not good for anyone. Next slide. Beyond traditional. So look for things that are easy to manage. You really should focus, honestly, I think the majority of your first sort of rollout for Zero Trust, I think should be around making sure that users are not miserable with the solutions you're going to put in place. It should be things that they can understand, things that they can leverage themselves. In a perfect world, your Zero Trust for the business will look just like their Zero Trust for the home. It shouldn't be a crazy change in the way we do things. A lot of us came from the world too where before COVID, we had to set up our own VPNs and we had to do those other things to make it work. Not a good place to be. Shouldn't require expensive consultants and pro services. You should be able to do this stuff yourself. Sorry, did I lose you?
You're fine.
Are we good?
I clicked one, not too many, and then I went back. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. So yeah, you shouldn't need a bunch of pro services to set your ZT stuff in place. If you need a bunch of consultants to come in and make ZT work, it's probably too complicated, and you're probably going to wind up paying through those on the far end to make it actually do things they're paying for. And then really PAM is very available there. Cloud, this stuff we've got not overall ZT, but really the reality of it is, if you do this correctly, you are migrating towards where a digital solution or a digital system needs to sit in the future. We don't want to go backwards. If you're running on VPNs were introduced as an enterprise quote security play in 1993. None of us would run on 1993 software.
Hey, Chase, I think we're getting some issues with your audio here. So I don't know if maybe you want to go off camera and then we can turn it over to Eric as well.
Okay.
I think I got you back now.
Okay. I was just going to say next slide, if you don't mind.
Yep.
And then we're going to kick this over to Eric. So this is a good time for me to sort of sign off here. But basically, ZT, real thing. It's coming your way, whether you like it or not. There is value to it. There are studies and research that validate this is the right way to do things. And there's a requirement for organizations to have technologies that will enable them toward instantiation. So with that, I'll step aside and let Eric do his thing.
Thanks so much, Chase. Appreciate that. Let me get my screen shared out here, and I will talk about how Keeper Security addresses zero trust. All right, so you've gotten kind of the basics of zero trust. It's more than just a methodology. It's just an architecture and a way of practice. So how can you go about implementing that or looking to leverage that in your organization? Well, there's a few ways. So what we do at Keeper Security is we're full zero trust and zero knowledge architecture that's built from the bottom up with that in mind. Everything we do has that architecture. And what that means is that you're required to use multiple layers of authentication, MFA, and the zero trust applies from the users of Keeper to the admins, and it also applies from the users and the admins to Keeper. So Keeper has no ability to decrypt your data. All encryption and decryption is done locally on your machine, and Keeper never holds your keys to the data at any time. So those are derived keys with a master password or a single sign-on using elliptic curve key pair. What I'm showing you now is the vault. This is our web vault. And as you can see, I've got a credential here that's stored. So I've got a username and password, and I've also got a rotating two-factor code here. And this is actually be able to be stored in the record. So instead of storing it in a phone, you can store it within Keeper as your password manager. And this can actually be auto-filled as well if you're going to launch that on a website. We also have our browser extension, so that handles the filling of fields, which can be automated or clicked manually. And we also have our apps on iOS and Android for mobile, of course. So I know we have a mix of some existing customers as well as some prospects, so I'll try to hit on a couple of things to cater to that audience. So first thing I'll show you is that if I launch this here, it's going to launch me into the login screen. And when I pick my account, it's going to autofill that password for me. So I didn't even need to know what that was. That can be a complex alphanumeric. And then I can sign in and it'll put in the automatic two-factor code for me. And then I can sign in. And then I'm signed in. So that's just an example signing into Azure. And the same thing works. You don't have to launch it from here, but you can. So if I just navigated to that page on my own, the browser extension would pick up on the fact that I am there and would automatically fill that in for me. So let me show you some of the zero trust features we have. So as an employee or a member of the organization, in my vault, I have the ability to do a security audit. This is going to pick up on anything that's weak or reused. So if it's reused in multiple records in your vault, it's going to tell you about that. Or if it's just weak and it's just not a good password and it's been used before, it's going to tell you about that. And then if I go to Breachwatch, this is our dark web monitoring service. So what we do is we take a double hashed version of the passwords you have stored in your vault, and we compare that in-house to a double hashed version of our data source for breached passwords. So we never send your data out anywhere. And when there's a match, we actually let you know about that. So you'll be able to see that match. You'll be able to ignore or resolve that. So that is the user experience. Now I'm going to switch over to the admin console. So this is the experience that your admins can have. So we are full true zero knowledge. So you will never see a password here in this admin console, but we do have a lot of metadata that we can work with. So we take advantage of that to help give you an idea of the security posture of your organization, and also to help you to improve that, keep an eye on things. So you can do things like set up alerts and that sort of thing. So I'll take you through a little bit of that. So all the data rolls up into this dashboard here, and you can track things over time, see kind of your overall score. So you see the security audit and the breach watch that I showed you earlier in the vault. So at the admin level, I can oversee that, but I don't see the actual encrypted record that is applies to. What I have instead is a quantity. So I can see the number of weak, medium, strong, reused, unique, and I can know who that applies to, and I need to go talk to them and have them fix whatever is off. Same thing with the breach watch. I can't see exactly what credential that is, but I know that if this person has 300 plus records at risk, something's wrong. I need to go talk to them, and they have to fix that to reduce that risk for the enterprise. On our reporting and alert engine, we have over 200 different events that we can track. Everything from a failed login to shared a password, deleted a record, ignored a breach watch alert. There's just a number of different events that you can run a report on a regular basis. Another nice thing you can do is actually do a real-time alert. So instead of report, I can go to alert, and this one is going to be for 2FA disabled. So if I go to this one, this event has the security event for disabled 2FA. So I want to know an alert whenever anyone disables their 2FA. As an admin, I want to be informed. And maybe I don't want to inform the user that actually did it, but I want specific recipients that I choose to be informed that someone disabled the 2FA, if they're even allowed to. So another concept that we have is our role-based enforcement policies, and that can prevent someone from turning their 2FA off. So I'll move now over to the roles section. So in the admin section, we can control roles, we can have our users, we can take action on a user, we can instantly see if they have 2FA on, and if they've accepted the transfer policy. Transfer policy is helpful to preserve the contents of the work vault when an employee is offboarded. And I could take user actions like to transfer that account, disable their 2FA, lock them, those sorts of things. I can also have teams come in straight from my single sign-on from my identity provider, such as Azure, Okta, any SAML 2.0 provider. And we can use that to bring in teams with their members as well. We can also create teams within the admin console itself. So moving into roles now. So the enforcement policies allow you to do a number of different things. So I won't go through all of them, but I'll just highlight a few. So if you are connected to an IDP like Azure, you may, you hopefully already have 2FA or MFA turned on, where there's another factor that's needed. You can totally keep that and use that along with the sign in. Will get you right into your vault. Or if you want to add another layer, a 3FA, which some people do want, you can enable the requirement of using two-factor on the keeper side. So you could also choose to turn off the MFA on your identity provider side and just use the keeper side. So you've got options to mix and match there. We do support hardware security keys as well as TOTP. We have a smartwatch app, text message, RSA Secure ID, and Duo as well. Here I can restrict the platform. So if, let's say I have a group of users that I don't want them to be able to use the mobile app. So I could just turn this off here, and then now they can't use the mobile app. And this is for each role. So you can have as many roles as you like. Different people have different needs for different enforcement policies. The Vault features is going to allow you to set generated password complexity. And that's going to be over here. So our generator, it now has the ability to generate passphrases, which is something new. You can set your minimum length, complexity, and you also can choose special characters, because we've all been in that situation where there's a website that you just use the password manager to generate a new password for, and it says, error, we don't accept these special characters. Well, Keepers address that. So now you can deselect certain special characters, apply that for that particular site. A passphrase generator is going to allow you to create a memorable word phrase. And domain-specific policies allow you to do that for a specific domain, or you could do it asterisk dot asterisk across the entire board. Our record types, so by default, Keeper comes with a bunch of different record types. We encrypt every single field, by the way, and not only do we encrypt the vault, but we also encrypt each individual record with its own 256-bit AES key. So there are multiple levels of encryption going on, which is unique to Keeper. We do have a number of different record types, so you can store any information you want. Login, payment card, addresses, and if you don't want to offer those templates up to your members, you can just disable them. And you could also go ahead and create your own custom templates and custom record types, and you could offer those up if somebody needs like a certain field. But we allow you to manage that. Creating and sharing, this is a lot of the important things here because you can control what level people are allowed to share at. Perhaps you want to have them in receiver-only mode, which would mean that they can only receive shared items and not share out to people. You can make it so that they can't upload files, make it so that they can't share at all. Maybe you want no sharing in your organization. That's fine too. We give you the tools and ability to set it the way that you want. Restrict it within your organization or allow outside. Import and export, that's going to allow you to actually bring your passwords into the vault and export them from the vault. So we usually like to restrict the export. Keeper fill is the browser extension. So that's going to be here. If you needed to enforce anything, you could do that from here. We also have the ability to set the logout timer. So this is the inactivity logout timer for each platform of how long before it will automatically log you out. And do you want to allow the stay logged in feature within the time frame of the logout timer? For added level of security, you can add an allow IP list. You can add a range or multiple ranges. And this will prevent a login attempt from even occurring unless they're coming from a set range. This might be VPN IP range or the Office IP range, and you have the option to use that. We do have a secrets manager. I think it's probably out of scope for this call, but allows you to get credentials from the vault and pull those into DevOps environments. And a transfer account is already covered earlier. So that's an example of one role that may be applied to maybe, let's say, these two users. And I can add them and they'll be applied in there. I could go to this and I could have a different role. Now, what happens if I put people in multiple roles? Well, it will enforce a combination of the most restrictive policies. So you have that option and it's there if you need it. You can also take any role and decide that you want to give it administrative permissions. So being an admin can mean many things. You could be a full admin, or I could be an admin over just one of the subnodes. Let's say I just need this person to be an HR department for this role. I just want them to manage the HR department. So I can add that, and then I'm going to go to this screen here. Now, these are really important. These are actually granular permissions, the administrative permissions that you can choose. So does this person need to manage everything going on there? Or maybe they only need to run reports. Maybe they need to just do alerts. And so I can give them permission to do just that. And then when they log into the admin console, they will be restricted to only perform those actions. And that's also done by role. You can assign a team to a role or a role to a team. We already went over our 2FA methods here. Compliance reports. Let's go there. So when you create a new compliance report, you're actually going to be able to get some insight into what is going on in the vault. So everything's still preserved with zero knowledge, and you won't see any passwords at all. But let's run a report on this user here. And we have A little too many coming back. So let's actually change it to this. User here. Okay, we got a good amount there. All right, so now I can drill down into this person. So compliance report is designed as an audit tool. For anyone who undergoes an audit, you need to provide proof of access or lack of access to specific resources, right, on a regular basis. So to help you do that, we've actually generated this module, and it allows you to show who has access to what and at what level of access do they have. Is it shared? If it is, what level of access do the people have that are shared to? So we can drill down into this person and we can see the different credentials that they have. We can drill down into a specific one and see that this person has can edit permission. We can see if their sharing is enabled. We can see if they're the owner, all this information. And this can all be exported to a nice PDF that's formatted in a nice way so that you can hand it to the auditors, and the auditors can do their job and go down the list and make sure everything is the way it's supposed to be. So that's what our compliance report is designed to do. Show those sharing relations and show the title and the URL of those records and show who has access to them. And so all that data is going to roll up into the dashboard, and you'll be able to manage users from there. And if I go back over to the vault, I'll touch on shared folders. So shared folders are one of the 3 ways to share. So you can actually share a record directly by using the share button. I could just share to someone I wanted to pick to share to, and I could set whether they're view only or edit and share or edit or share only, or I could change the owner. I could actually make them the owner of the record if I wanted to give it to them. So that's direct share. We also have sharing in the folder. So if something's inside of a shared folder, it'll be shared with the users that are listed there. And I can control the level of permissions that they have on that folder. Are they allowed to add and remove people? Are they allowed to add and remove records? Maybe they are part of this folder until I set expiration, and I could update those permissions if I wanted to. The records, they have record level permissions. Maybe this one's view only. This one's edit and share. Oh, maybe actually I want it to be view only. So I'll change that to view only, save that, and that change goes through to the folder. Third way to share is going to be our one-time share. So that's going to generate a link. And the nice thing about this is you can generate this link to last however long you want. An hour, 24 hours, a week, 30 days. Let's do 30 days. So we'll create a link. So we have a secure link here. Now, anyone can use this link, anyone you give it to, but only one person, only the first person, actually the first device that's given to. The nice part is they don't even have to have Keeper. They can open this in their browser, on their phone, or their computer, but wherever they do open it, that's going to establish an elliptic curve key pair and cryptographically tie it to that device. And they'll have access to view it as many times as they want on that device up until the length of duration that you set it to expire. Or if you decide it's going to expire now, you can just hit this and it's expired and they can't see it anymore. And you can see I've done this with the number of different links for this record as my demo. And you can see the expired ones. You can see the active ones. You can even see when they opened it. So that's the third way to share. You can also have logical folders for hierarchy. You can have various folders that you want to use. You can use color coding. You can store server information in here. That's all full zero knowledge, encrypted. So each of these folders is encrypted with its own key. Each of these records is encrypted with its own key. And so I can see this has a unique ID tied to it. And behind the scenes, there's a unique key that is tied to encrypting the entire contents of this record. And that's about all I had to share. So I will stop sharing my screen now and turn it back over to Kim.
Hey, Eric, we did have one question pop up in the chat that maybe you could answer. It's in regards to the special character restrictions on passwords. So Michael asks, can a user adjust those special character restrictions, or do they have to wait for an admin to do it?
Good question. Yes. So if there's no enforcement applying, when the user clicks the dice to create a password, they can actually choose those special characters themselves. So remove those. And then you can choose to use this as your default. So yes, you can do that as a user unless it's disabled from the admin.
Okay, great. Thanks for answering that, Eric. And then
Sure.
I think
Yeah,
we just have a few more slides to cover.
Okay. So transforming our zero trust implementation. So people love to use Keeper because it makes life easier, right? They don't go out and look for something that's the most hardest, thing to use that makes things take forever. It's not only secure, but it's easy to use. It can be rolled out in just an hour, and it helps to address vulnerabilities across everyone in the organization. I mean, you heard Chase mentioned earlier about people will create bad passwords. They will have bad login history and methodologies. And what we do is we give them a tool that makes it actually easy to be more secure and more safe. And we integrate with the existing things that you have, such as your IDP. And we have a nice modern interface. We can also store passkeys. We can also store files or photos. Those can be uploaded to a record. Those are also encrypted as well. We can go to the next slide, please. And yeah, you can learn more about Keeper. We are FedRAMP and StateRAMP certified. We are FIPS 140-2 encrypted modules compliant, and we also have a slew of other compliance such as SOC 2 and ISO 27001. And we'd be happy to tell you more about this. If you are a Keeper customer, you can go ahead and reach out to your customer success manager. And if you're not a Keeper customer yet, you can reach out to us through the links from the webinar, and we'll be happy to get in touch with you.
Thanks so much, Chase and Eric. We do have a few extra minutes, so I'm going to leave it open for just a couple more minutes in case anyone has any questions. If you do have any additional questions, please feel free to type them in the Q&A module or the chat module. And again, we'll just leave it open for a couple more minutes here. But if you do need to leave, thank you so much for joining today. And again, you'll receive a copy of the recording sometime next week. Okay, Eric, I think I've got one for you here. Can you export passwords from a competitor product, for example, a 1Password or a Bitwarden?
Yes, you absolutely can. We can import passwords into Keeper from any of the major password managers or from a CSV file. So it's absolutely no problem to export and then import into Keeper. And we also allow export out of Keeper as well. But we do have a pretty robust import engine that is able to take just about any type of file that contains credentials and allow you to import that easily. So yes, absolutely we can.
Great, thanks, Eric. All right, well, I'm not seeing any more questions. So again, thank you to everyone for joining today. Thank you to Chase and Eric for presenting today. We hope you all enjoyed this presentation. And thank you and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.